Today's video we're doing another Mystery Monday. Of course, it's Monday or Sunday for some of you guys. I feel like I have to say that at the start of every single one of these, otherwise I get a million comments being like, it's not Monday. The magic of time zones. Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to quickly remind you that if you live in Brisbane, feel free to come to my meetup. I'm doing a meetup on the 8th of June, Thursday the 8th of June from 5 to 7 p.m. at Westfield Chermside, and I'm doing it at the Mecca Maxima store, which is on level 1 of the shopping center. So make sure you guys come and say hey. I'm so incredibly excited to meet you. I cannot believe that it's this week. I'm gonna go get my tan on, I'm gonna get my nails done all nice, get a haircut. I want to look so good when I meet you guys. So yeah, feel free to come along if you guys live in Brisbane. I'm so excited, and let's just go ahead and get into today's case. So for today's case, we're going to be talking about the Lake Bodom murders, which occurred in Lake Bodom, which is in Finland, on the 5th of June in 1960. On the 4th of June in 1960, 4 teenagers, Miley, Anya, Seppo, and Nils, I hope that I'm saying those names correctly, decided to go camping at Lake Bodom. Both of the girls were 15 years old and the boys were both 18 years old at the time. On June the 5th, while they were all asleep between 4 and 6 a.m., 3 of the teenagers were murdered. Mila, Anya, and Seppo were all murdered using a knife and a blunt instrument, both of which were never found, and Nils was badly injured. He sustained a concussion, fractures to his jaw, fractures to his facial bones, as well as bruising to his face. Nils and his girlfriend Miley, they were found on top of the tent. Miley was undressed from the waist down, and she was the most brutally murdered out of the 3 of them. She had been stabbed multiple times post-death, so I think it was determined that she died from blunt force trauma and was stabbed multiple times after her death. Nils was also found on top of the tent with his girlfriend, and then the other 2 were found inside the tent. I also believe that Miley was the only one who was stabbed. I think the other 3 just were murdered from blunt force trauma, but I think from what I read this on 2 separate sources, that Miley was the only one who was stabbed. The killer stole the wallets and the clothes of the victims, and some of them, not all of them, were found down about 500 meters away, semi-hidden, and from the tracks it was found that the killer was actually wearing Nils' shoes. Nils claims that he was in total shock while and after everything had happened, so he didn't see a lot, but he does say that apparently he saw black and bright red eyes coming toward him. At around 6 a.m., which is on the day of the murders, 2 boys who were bird watching saw the collapsed tent, and they said that they saw a blonde man walking away from the tent. They saw it from afar, so they couldn't really give a description of the man, and that's really all that they said. That's all the information they could get out of these 2 boys. They didn't seem to know a lot. There was also another boy who was fishing nearby, and he says that he saw a blonde man in the area, but these are the only 2 leads about the blonde man. There's no more information about him, and it's pretty much a dead end. The bodies were not found until 11 a.m. when Risto Sirin, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, I'm so sorry if I butchered that, but he was jogging and he saw the bodies. He promptly called the police, and then the police didn't arrive until about noon. Once police arrived, the investigators determined that the killer never entered the tent. He stabbed and hit them through the tent walls. The tent was really, really badly damaged. It was all ripped and there was blood all over it. So that is actually pretty much all of the evidence. I'm gonna go ahead and get to the suspects now. There are 4 suspects in this case, and they're all really, really, really shady actually. The first suspect we're gonna talk about is Pentti Soininen. I think that's how you say it. He was actually convicted of several violent crimes in the late 1960s. He was 15 at the time of the murders, but he lived really close to Lake Bodom. At the age of 24, while he was serving time in jail for the convicted crimes that I just mentioned, the violent ones, he actually confessed to the murder. The police did interrogate him because of this, but his confession didn't hold up, so they pretty much ended up just like being like, no, this guy is a psychopath. He actually later hung himself in a prisoner transport station, and that's pretty much all of the info that I could find on this guy. So he was a suspect, but I just feel like the only reason he was a suspect was because of his confession, which didn't even end up holding up. The next suspect is Hans Osman. He was a alleged KGB KGB spy living in Finland in the 50s and 60s. He was a former police officer. He served in the SS troops and was a guard in Auschwitz during World War II. The strange thing about this guy to me is that while Nils was under hypnosis, he was able to provide a few descriptions of the killer, I think, and they got 4 different drawings from his descriptions, all of which look really, really similar. I'm going to insert them now so you can see them. There was another guy who turned up to one of the funerals who looked a lot like these sketches. Actually, no one knows who he is, and I don't think anyone had seen him after the funerals, but the sketches, the unknown guy at the funeral, both of them looked like Hans. So Hans visited the Helsinki hospital the day after the murders in the morning. They say he was aggressive, he was nervous, and he faked unconsciousness. They also say that his fingernails were black and the clothes that he was wearing were stained with a red substance, which they think was blood. Tests were not taken before he left, so it could never be confirmed whether or not it was blood, but doctors definitely think that it was blood that was on his clothes. His clothing matched that of the murderer, and he had longish blonde hair, which he actually ended up cutting once details of the description of the blonde man came to light. He also lived within 5 kilometers of Bodom, so very, very close to Lake Bodom. Police did meet with him briefly, but I'm pretty sure they dismissed it. Well, they definitely dismissed him. They said he could go. They didn't test the clothes for some reason. They decided not to examine them. And for some reason, they didn't want to cross-examine the doctors, even though the doctors said that they were like certain that the stuff on his top was blood. Detective Matty Polaro suspected that this guy was actually responsible for 5 different murders, one of which occurring as soon as 10 months after the Lake Bodom murders. So there's just a lot of information on this guy, and on top of that, he is really, really similar looking to the descriptions. If you guys saw the photos before, he looks so incredibly much. Moving on, the next suspect is Carl Vladimir Gilstrom. He was actually a kiosk man in, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the place that he is from, but in this place that he is from, he's actually known as the kiosk man. He was said to have hated campers, and he was also known to be quite aggressive. Reportedly, he even confessed to the murders to his neighbors, but he ended up being, I think it was discounted because his wife gave him an alibi. She said that she was awake all night, supposedly, and he was asleep in bed with her. However, before she died, she also claimed that he threatened her if she told the truth. And basically what I take from this is that the alibi was a lie and that he threatened her in order to not tell anyone the fact that he killed these teenagers, but I'm not really sure. Apparently a few days after the murders, he filled in the well, which is in his courtyard as well, and his neighbors believe that the instruments used to kill the teenagers are buried inside the well. Police did investigate and search his house and stuff, but they didn't find anything. I don't even think they dug up the well though. I'm assuming that because they didn't find anything incriminating along the rest of the residence, that is why they decided not to dig up the well, because they didn't have any reason to. But according to neighbors, that's where he buried the stuff, which would make sense as to why the murder weapons were never found. And that brings us to our last suspect, which is that Nils himself actually committed the murders. He was pretty much dismissed as a suspect until 44 years later in 2004 when he was arrested for the murders. In 2005, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigations considered the case closed based on bloodstain analysis. In an official statement, they actually said that Nils erupted in a jealous fit of anger, which is why he murdered his girlfriend the most brutally. Some people even think that Nils committed the murder because his girlfriend wouldn't have sex with him, which would explain why she was undressed from the bottom half, or just that they were having problems in the relationship. Starting on August the 4th in 2005, the trial to accuse Nils or to convict Nils started, and they were aiming for a sentence of life imprisonment. They say to the new examination of old evidence that it made Nils a suspect, but his defense said that 1 or more people committed the murders and that Nils would have been enabled to commit them considering his injuries, which seems like a weird defense to me considering he could have self-inflicted these injuries after the fact so that he wouldn't be seen as guilty, but whatever. But on top of that, the only DNA evidence that was found was that of the 4 victims, which to me indicates nils, the fact that the killer was definitely wearing his shoes, and it's like it's so random that the killer would just have the same size feet as Nils, and there's no other DNA at the crime scene besides that of the 4 victims. At the end of the trial, Nils was acquitted due to insufficient evidence because the trial was just so long ago that most of the evidence was too deteriorated to even provide any insight on what happened. So yeah, he ended up being acquitted based on lack of evidence. So I feel like we actually pretty much covered all of the theories within talking about the suspects. Aside from the blonde man, it is possible that this guy murdered them, but there's no leads on him. No one knows who this blonde guy is, just that 2-3 people said that they saw this blonde guy at the scene of the crime, but that's pretty much it. There is another theory about Nils, which is that he murdered them and it was premeditated murder, so he knew before going there that he was going to murder them, whether it was because he was having problems with his girlfriend and he was planning on murdering her there and then just murdered the other 2 because he didn't want them to say anything. He didn't want to get caught doing this. Personally, I think that this was Nils because it's strange to me that this guy would murder 3 of them and then just not murder this one guy. Like, that seems strange to me. His girlfriend was the most brutally murdered. She was undressed from the waist down. I feel like everything to me points to Nils. They were wearing his shoes. The only DNA evidence found there was that of the 4 victims. It's really shady to me, so I honestly believe that Nils is the one that did this, but definitely let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your theories. I would love to hear your thoughts on the case. I love discussing it with you guys in the comments, so definitely let me know in the comments what you think of this case. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and if you want more Mystery Mondays, subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!